Logan Reed had always prided himself on his ability to see the unseen. As a history professor, he understood the nuances of deception and power plays, the way betrayals unfolded over time like the slow, inevitable collapse of empires. It was why he didn't react when he first noticed the signs: Vanessa's new designer bags, the sudden shift in her gym routine, the faint smell of cologne on her skin that wasn't his. To the world, they were the perfect couple. He was respected in academia, admired by colleagues and students alike. Vanessa, with her golden hair and effortless charm, had built a clientele at the upscale beauty salon she worked at, catering to the city's elite. Together, they lived in a sleek downtown Chicago apartment, complete with a view that stretched for miles. But Logan knew better than to trust appearances. One evening, as he graded papers in his study, he heard Vanessa laughing from the other room, her voice laced with something he hadn't heard in years: genuine excitement. He watched through the reflection of a glass cabinet as she leaned against the kitchen counter, phone pressed to her ear, twirling her hair. The way her lips curved into a secretive smile sent a cold realization through him. She wasn't talking to a friend. Instead of confronting her, Logan chose patience. If history had taught him anything, it was that wars weren't won by rash decisions. They were won by careful, calculated moves. He would gather evidence, understand the full picture before making his first strike. A few days later, he followed the patterns. Vanessa had started going to the gym at odd hours, claiming she had to keep up with her clients' busy schedules. But Logan had been married to her long enough to know the difference between a fitness obsession and an affair. He installed a discreet tracking app on her phone. Not that she'd ever suspect him of being the type. Vanessa always saw him as predictable, the safe, steady husband who was too engrossed in his books to question her absences. It was her first mistake. The app confirmed what he already knew. She wasn't at the gym. She was at the Langston Hotel. Logan's hands clenched around his phone, but he forced himself to stay calm. The Langston was an expensive boutique hotel downtown, the kind that catered to those who had everything to lose. That night, as Vanessa returned home, her face glowing from whatever lies she had told herself to justify her actions, Logan greeted her with a smile. He asked about her day, listened as she fabricated details about a non-existent spa session, and watched her sip wine with the ease of someone who believed she was untouchable. She had no idea she had already lost, because Logan wasn't just going to expose her. He was going to make sure she destroyed herself. Logan didn't act immediately. He knew that real revenge required patience. The following week, he deepened his research. He placed a subtle call to a private investigator, someone discreet, someone who owed him a favor. Within days, he had a full report. The man Vanessa was seeing was Andrew Sullivan, a wealthy real estate mogul known for his aggressive business tactics and a habit of cycling through women like disposable commodities. Perfect. Logan sifted through the investigator's findings with clinical precision. Andrew had a long history of infidelity, even an ex-wife who had taken him to the cleaners in court. His businesses were lucrative but built on risky ventures, one financial misstep away from collapse. This was a man who valued control. Logan would make sure he lost it. The next step was to set the stage. Logan began planting subtle doubts in Vanessa's mind. An offhand comment about a friend who had been caught cheating, a casual mention of how easy it was to track phone records. He watched as she hesitated before answering texts, as she started locking her phone when she never had before. She was nervous. Good. The trap was beginning to close. Logan decided it was time for the first real strike. He orchestrated an encounter. One evening, he suggested they go out for dinner, choosing a high-end restaurant he knew Andrew frequented. He made the reservation under a different name, ensuring their arrival would be a surprise. And just as he expected, Vanessa froze the moment they walked in. Across the room, seated at a dimly lit booth, was Andrew Sullivan. And he wasn't alone. A brunette woman sat beside him, laughing at something he whispered in her ear. Vanessa's grip on her wine glass tightened. Logan feigned ignorance. "Something wrong?" he asked, taking a sip of his bourbon, watching her reaction over the rim of his glass. "And no," she stammered, forcing a smile. "Just thought I saw someone I knew." "Oh." Logan turned slightly, pretending to glance around the room. Anyone I should say hello to? She shook her head quickly, her fingers trembling as she reached for the menu. Checkmate. Logan leaned back in his seat, a satisfied smirk playing at his lips. Vanessa had just learned an important lesson. She wasn't the only one playing games. And the real game had only just begun. Vanessa was different after that night. Logan saw it in the way her fingers lingered on her phone, hesitating before typing, deleting, and retyping messages. He saw in the way she glanced over her shoulder more often, her posture a little stiffer, her laughs a little more forced. She was unraveling, and Logan relished every moment of it. She didn't know what he knew, and that made all the difference. The next morning, over breakfast, he kept the act going. He poured her coffee, kissed her cheek, and casually mentioned how nice it was to have a night out together. Vanessa nodded, but her mind was somewhere else. She barely touched her toast. Logan leaned back in his chair. You seem distracted, babe. Everything okay? Vanessa forced a smile. Of course. Just a little tired. Work's been stressful. Logan nodded knowingly, as if he actually believed her. Maybe we should plan a trip. Get away from all the stress for a bit. Vanessa's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. A trip? Yeah, I was thinking New York. Maybe even a little weekend getaway at the Langston Hotel. He took a slow sip of his coffee, watching for her reaction. She nearly choked. Logan pretended not to notice. He stood, stretching. Think about it. Could be nice. He walked out of the kitchen, hiding his smirk. The seed was planted. Let her stew in it. Logan had always believed in the power of silence. People revealed more when they thought no one was listening. And Vanessa? She was an open book. That evening, she made a mistake. Logan was in his study, pretending to be buried in work when he heard her whispering in the bedroom. He muted his laptop and leaned back in his chair, listening. Her voice was hushed, urgent. No, you don't understand. He mentioned the Langston. He never talks about hotels like that. What if he knows? A pause. Then, I don't know, Andrew. Maybe I should just... Logan didn't hear the rest. He didn't need to. His job was done. She was afraid. And fear made people reckless. He allowed himself a small smile. Vanessa had always thought of him as predictable, a man of books and quiet routines. She had no idea the kind of man she had married. And soon enough, she would learn. Vanessa's paranoia grew with each passing day. She was checking her phone constantly, jumping at every notification, and sneaking nervous glances at Logan when she thought he wasn't looking. Logan made sure to fuel that fear. He started leaving small hints, breadcrumbs she couldn't ignore. One evening, he accidentally left his laptop open on an article titled How to Spot a Cheating Spouse. Another morning, he casually mentioned running into an old friend who was a private investigator. He watched her squirm with every carefully placed seed of doubt. But he needed to push her further. One night, as Vanessa returned from a supposed late work meeting, Logan was sitting in the living room, a half-empty glass of bourbon in hand. He didn't look at her immediately, just swirled the amber liquid slowly. Long night? He asked, his tone even unreadable. Vanessa hesitated at the doorway. Yeah, work was insane. I am exhausted. Logan finally looked up, holding her gaze. Must be hard. Balancing everything. Keeping track of details. She froze, just for a second, then forced a laugh. What's that supposed to mean? He shrugged. Just an observation. Details matter, don't they? She quickly excused herself, retreating to the bedroom. Logan let her go. She needed to feel cornered. And soon, she would make the mistake he was waiting for. Vanessa couldn't take the pressure anymore. Logan saw it in her restless pacing, the way she clutched her phone as if it were a lifeline. She was losing control. Then, the moment came. Late at night, while Logan pretended to be asleep, Vanessa slipped out of bed and crept into the bathroom with her phone. He waited a few minutes, then silently followed. Through the thin gap of the barely closed door, he heard her urgent whisper. Andrew, I can't do this anymore. I think he knows. He's acting different. He mentioned the Langston. A pause. Then her voice, more desperate. No, you don't get it. He's smart. Smarter than we thought. What if he's setting me up? Logan smirked. Oh, Vanessa, he thought. You have no idea. He stepped back into the shadows before she could catch him listening. He had her exactly where he wanted her, paranoid, desperate and on the edge of collapse. And he wasn't finished yet. Vanessa was unraveling, and Logan could see it in every anxious glance, every fidgeting motion. She was trapped inside her own mind, spiraling deeper into paranoia. But he wasn't going to let her off easy. The next morning, over coffee, Logan decided to push her further. He scrolled through his phone absent-mindedly, letting out a low chuckle. Vanessa, seated across from him, barely touched her breakfast. "What's funny?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Logan smirked. "Oh, just something an old friend sent me. Turns out, someone I know has been booking a lot of private hotel suites." He said it lightly, like it was just idle gossip, but the color drained from Vanessa's face. Her grip tightened around her coffee mug. "Oh," she managed. "Ooh." Logan shrugged, feigning disinterest. Just a guy who thought he could keep secrets. But secrets always come out, don't they? Vanessa swallowed hard. "Yeah, I guess they do." She was crumbling, and Logan enjoyed every second of it. Vanessa was growing reckless. That night, she left their apartment under the excuse of a work emergency. Logan didn't follow her. He didn't need to. He had already installed tracking software on her phone. Instead, he waited. An hour later, she returned, her face pale and her hands trembling. Logan sat on the couch, pretending to read. He looked up as she entered. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice laced with mild curiosity. "Yeah," she answered too quickly. "Just work stuff." Logan tilted his head. "You sure? You look like you've seen a ghost." She forced a smile. "Just tired. I'm going to take a shower." He let her go, listening to the sound of running water. Meanwhile, he picked up his phone and checked the tracker. She had gone to Andrew's apartment, and she hadn't stayed long. She's panicking. Good. Logan knew it was time for the final blow. He had set the stage, and now he needed Vanessa to make the wrong move, to dig her own grave. He planned a dinner, an elaborate one, a fancy restaurant, the kind she used to beg him to take her to. He told her he wanted to rekindle their spark, make things work. She agreed, but Logan could see the hesitation in her eyes. She wasn't thinking about salvaging their marriage. She was thinking about escape. The night of the dinner, Logan arranged for an unexpected guest to be there, someone who had the power to shatter Vanessa's world. Andrew's wife. Vanessa didn't know Andrew was still technically married, but Logan did, and he had made sure she would find out in the most public, humiliating way possible. As Vanessa and Logan took their seats at the restaurant, a woman approached their table. Elegant, cold, and furious. "Vanessa Reed?" the woman asked. Vanessa turned, confusion flashing across her face. "Yes." The woman smirked. "Oh, good. I just wanted to meet the woman my husband has been screwing behind my back." Vanessa's face went white. Logan leaned back in his chair, watching the scene unfold. This was checkmate. Time slowed as Vanessa sat frozen, her face drained of color. The murmurs from nearby tables began almost immediately, whispers spreading like wildfire through the restaurant. Logan watched her grip the edge of the table, her nails digging into the white linen cloth. Andrew's wife, a striking woman with sharp features and an even sharper gaze, took a step closer. "Nothing to say. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. Women like you never do when they get caught." Vanessa's mouth opened, but no words came out. Logan could see the desperate calculations running through her head. How to spin it, how to get out of this, how to save face. She wouldn't. Andrew's wife tossed a folded stack of papers onto the table. "I had you followed weeks ago. Every late-night hotel visit. Every secret phone call. You're not special, sweetheart. You're just another disposable affair." Vanessa flinched as if she had been slapped. Logan hid his smirk behind his glass of wine. This was better than he had even imagined. Andrew, across the room, had finally noticed the scene. He stood, his expression darkening as he strode toward them. "Jessica, this isn't the place," he muttered under his breath. Jessica turned to him, eyes flashing. "Oh, but it is. You don't get to decide anymore, Andrew. I already filed for divorce. Enjoy sorting out the settlement. Your company's going to bleed for this." Andrew's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Logan watched the panic ripple through Vanessa's features as she realized what that meant. Andrew wasn't the powerful, untouchable man she had imagined. He was about to lose everything. And so was she. Vanessa turned to Logan, her voice trembling. Let's go. Now. Logan tilted his head. Why? We're just getting started. Vanessa bolted from the restaurant like a wounded animal, her heels clicking against the pavement as she rushed toward their car. Logan followed at a leisurely pace, savoring the unraveling of her world. When they reached the car, she spun toward him, her expression furious and desperate all at once. Did you know? Logan crossed his arms. Know what? That your lover was married? That his wife had you followed? That she's about to take him for everything he's worth? He shrugged. Yeah, I knew. Her breath hitched. You let this happen. Logan took a step closer, lowering his voice. No, Vanessa. I made this happen. Her eyes widened, a dawning horror settling over her. What? He leaned in, his voice calm, steady. Because you thought I was stupid. Predictable. Easy to lie to. But you forgot something, Vanessa. I study history. And history is full of people who thought they could betray someone and walk away unscathed. But in the end, they always lose. Vanessa staggered back against the car. So what now? Logan smiled. Now, you go home and wonder what else I know. What else I've done. And he stepped past her, unlocking the car. I enjoy the view. Vanessa hesitated for only a moment before getting into the passenger seat, her hands trembling in her lap. She knew she had lost the first battle, but the war wasn't over yet. The drive home was suffocatingly silent. Vanessa sat rigid in the passenger seat, her fingers twisting the hem of her dress, her mind undoubtedly racing through possible ways to salvage what was left of her carefully constructed lies. Logan, however, drove with an easy calm, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel to the slow rhythm of the radio. Are you going to say anything? Vanessa finally broke the silence, her voice shaky. Logan didn't bother looking at her. About what? That you were cheating? That your boyfriend is now drowning in legal hell? Or that you've officially run out of places to hide? Her breath came in shallow bursts. You can't just sit there and act like you don't care. He smirked. Oh, I care, Vanessa. Just not in the way you think. She turned toward him, desperate. Logan, I don't. He cut her off, his voice dangerously low. Don't insult me with apologies you don't mean. She flinched, looking out the window as the city lights streaked past. Logan pulled into the parking garage of their apartment building and shifted the car in a park. He turned to her, finally allowing her to see the full weight of the cold amusement in his eyes. Go inside, he said simply. Get some rest. You're going to need it. Vanessa hesitated. What does that mean? Logan leaned in slightly. It means you should enjoy the bed while you still have it. Her lips parted in shock, but he was already out of the car, walking toward the elevator. She sat frozen for a long moment before finally following him inside. Vanessa didn't sleep that night. Logan knew because he could hear her restless pacing through their bedroom while he sat in his office, calmly reviewing the final steps of his plan. By morning, she looked exhausted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her usual polished appearance was noticeably absent. She sat at the kitchen counter, stirring a cup of coffee she wasn't drinking. Logan, she said cautiously, we need to talk. He barely glanced up from his newspaper. Do we? She exhaled sharply. Look, I know I messed up, but you have to give me a chance to fix this. We build a life together. Logan folded the paper neatly and placed it on the table. Correction, you build a lie, and now you're scrambling to salvage what's left of it. Vanessa reached for his hand, but he pulled back before she could touch him. Please, Logan, let's just take a step back. We can work through this. He studied her for a long moment, then let out a small, knowing chuckle. Vanessa, you're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry that you got caught. She swallowed, her hands clenching into fists. What do you want from me? Logan stood, adjusting the cuff of his shirt. Nothing. That's the beauty of it. I don't need anything from you anymore. He grabbed his keys and walked to the door, leaving her sitting at the counter, shattered and silent. She had no idea that while she had been pacing the bedroom all night, he had already started the process to take everything away from her. Logan had always believed that revenge was best served cold, and this was no exception. While Vanessa spent the day spiraling in anxiety, he was executing the final stages of his plan. He had already met with his lawyer, adjusted the financial accounts, and ensured that by the time she realized what was happening, it would be too late. That evening, he returned home to find her sitting on the couch, nervously clutching a glass of wine. The television was on, but she wasn't watching it. Her mind was elsewhere. "Logan, we need to talk." He sighed, setting his briefcase down. "We already did." "No, really talk." She set her glass down, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "I know I hurt you, and I know you're angry, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, start over. I don't want to lose you." Logan tilted his head slightly, as if considering her words. Then, he reached into his pocket and placed a folded piece of paper on the coffee table. Vanessa hesitated before picking it up. As her eyes scanned the document, her hands began to tremble. "Divorce papers?" Logan nodded. "Already filed. Shouldn't take long." She looked up at him, disbelief etched across her face. "You're serious? You're just walking away?" "Walking away? No, Vanessa." He smiled faintly. "I'm watching you fall." Her breath hitched. "You can't do this. You can't just erase me." Logan exhaled sharply. "That's where you're wrong. You erased yourself the moment you walked into that hotel with Andrew." She swallowed hard, her eyes darting toward the financial statements on the table, the ones she hadn't noticed before. As realization dawned, her face paled. What did you do?" Logan adjusted his cufflinks, his tone casual. "Everything you were planning to do to me. I just got there first. The accounts are locked, the house is in my name, and by the time this is finalized, you'll have nothing." Vanessa stood abruptly, knocking over the wine glass. "You wouldn't." Logan leaned in slightly, his voice cold. "I already did." She stumbled back onto the couch, her world collapsing around her. "And Logan?" He simply turned and walked toward the door, leaving her to drown in the wreckage of her own making. Vanessa didn't leave the apartment for 2 days. Logan knew because he had the security system logs. She was trapped, cycling between denial and desperation, clinging to some false hope that she could still find a way out. But there was no way out. The final nail in the coffin came in the form of a court summons. Logan had filed a financial misconduct claim, tying her directly to Andrew's fraudulent business dealings. She wasn't just losing her marriage, she was about to lose her entire social standing. By the time she finally confronted Logan again, she was a shell of the woman she once was. "You ruined me," she whispered, standing in the doorway of his office. He glanced up from his desk, utterly unimpressed. "No, Vanessa, you ruined yourself. I just made sure you couldn't talk your way out of it." She let out a shaky breath, her last shred of arrogance slipping away. Was any of it real? For a moment, Logan almost pitied her. "Almost. Once," he admitted. "But you made sure it wasn't anymore." Vanessa looked down, her hands trembling. "So this is it?" Logan stood, walking past her without another glance. "This was over the moment you thought you could play me. And Vanessa, you were never as good at this game as you thought." As he left her standing there, broken and defeated, he smiled to himself. Because in the end, the wolf always wins. Vanessa tried to fight it. Logan expected as much. She made desperate phone calls, reached out to old friends, tried to find some way, any way, to regain control. But no one wanted to be associated with a woman caught in scandal. Andrew's downfall had dragged her down with him, and Logan had made sure she had no financial leverage left to save herself. On the morning of their divorce settlement, she stood across from him in the lawyer's office, thinner than before, her once polished appearance slipping into something almost unfamiliar. Logan could see it in her eyes. She was still hoping for a last-minute miracle. "You don't have to do this," she murmured as they waited for the lawyers to finalize paperwork. Logan leaned back in his chair. "I already did." Her lips parted as if she had another argument, another plea, but nothing came. She had lost. She signed the papers with shaking hands, and just like that, it was over. As she pushed the papers back toward the lawyer, Vanessa kept her eyes down, avoiding Logan's gaze. He watched her closely, waiting for the moment she would look up, hoping for some sign of sympathy or regret from him. But Logan had nothing left to give her. She had drained him of that long ago. As they stood to leave, Vanessa finally broke the silence. "Logan, do you think we could ever—" "No," he said without hesitation, buttoning his coat. "We couldn't. She flinched as if he had struck her, but Logan walked out without a second glance. Logan stepped outside the office, inhaling the crisp morning air. For the first time in years, he felt weightless. No more lies. No more manipulation. No more Vanessa. He walked to his car, pulling out his phone. There was a single message waiting for him. A text from an old college friend, Olivia, someone he hadn't spoken to in years. Drink some time? Heard about the divorce. Think it's worth celebrating. Logan chuckled, shaking his head. Maybe he would. Instead of heading straight home, he drove to the lake, a quiet spot he used to visit before his marriage. He sat on a bench, overlooking the water, letting the wind clear the last remnants of the past from his mind. A weight had been lifted, and for the first time in a long while, Logan was truly free. The world stretched before him in a way it never had when he was bound by deceit and obligation. He thought back to the man he had been before Vanessa, before the years of blind trust and quiet resentment. He had sacrificed so much for a woman who had never truly valued him. But now, the sacrifice was over. He was done being the fool. He took a deep breath and exhaled slowly, watching the ripples spread across the lake surface. A new chapter was beginning, and this time, he was the one in control. The world moved on without Vanessa Reed. Logan didn't check in on her, but he heard whispers. She tried to rebuild, but her name was tainted. No high-end salon wanted her. No wealthy benefactor stepped in to save her. Andrew had disappeared, likely cutting his losses. A year later, Logan ran into an old acquaintance at a conference. "You won't believe who I saw the other day," the man said with a grin. "Vanessa, working as a receptionist at some second-rate spa. Life comes at you fast, huh?" Logan only nodded, his smirk barely concealed. Later that night, he found himself looking up her name online, just out of curiosity. Her social media accounts had all but disappeared, and any trace of the glamorous life she once flaunted was gone. The only thing he found was a blurry picture in the background of a local business website, where she stood behind a front desk, her smile forced and tired. He didn't feel sorry for her. She had made her choices. The irony wasn't lost on him. Vanessa had spent years chasing wealth and status, aligning herself with men who could offer her luxury and influence. Now, she was reduced to something she had always looked down upon. Just another struggling woman trying to scrape by. Did she regret it? Did she think about him, about the life they had before she destroyed it? Logan would never know, and he didn't care. He had spent too much time wondering about her motives, too many sleepless nights trying to understand her betrayal. Now, she was nothing more than a footnote in his story. A year and a half after his divorce, Logan found himself sitting at a bar with Olivia, a drink in his hand, laughter in the air. He was happier than he had been in years, lighter, free. "You ever regret it?" Olivia asked, stirring her cocktail, not giving her another chance. Logan smiled, slow and knowing. "Regret? No. She played a game she couldn't win. And me." He took a sip of his drink, the ice clinking softly. "I never lose." Olivia smirked. "That sounds like something a wolf would say." Logan chuckled, tilting his glass toward her. "Maybe I've always been one. Just took me a while to remember." The bar was lively, filled with people talking, laughing, enjoying the night. Logan found himself at ease in a way he hadn't been in a long time. The tension that had once coiled in his chest, the ever-present sense of betrayal and anger, had melted away. For years, he had let Vanessa define his life, his pain, his choices, his happiness. But now, she was nothing more than a distant memory, a mistake he had learned from and moved beyond. He glanced at Olivia, her eyes bright with curiosity. There was something refreshing about her, genuine, unforced. Maybe this was the beginning of something new. Or maybe it was just a drink with an old friend. Either way, Logan was in control of his own life now. And as he leaned back in his seat, completely at ease, the wolf smiled one last time.